So it's been such a wonderful morning at this second day of the Disability Rights and Inclusion Third Annual Conference. And I'm so pleased and honored to introduce our lunch keynote speaker. I don't want to spend too much time. I want to reserve that time for Justice Bernstein. But I just want to say that Justice Richard Bernstein has been on my radar for quite a number of years. In my capacity as a professor of law, I've been quite familiar with Justice Bernstein's, then Mr. Bernstein, I suppose, work as one of the leading lawyers in Michigan and beyond, and then Justice Bernstein's appointment to the Michigan Supreme Court. As a disability rights advocate, I'm quite familiar with Justice Bernstein's leadership in this area as well, and in my capacity as director of the Jewish Law Institute here as Turo. There too, I'm familiar with Justice Bernstein, who has spoken across the world to Jewish audiences and beyond on crucial issues as disability rights and inclusion. And above all that, Justice Bernstein is a well-known athlete, marathon runner, et cetera, et cetera. And I've already said too much, so I'm so pleased and honored to welcome Justice Richard Bernstein.
My pleasure. Well, good morning, everybody. I want to do something a little bit different because this has been a fabulous conference, and I've enjoyed having a chance to hear the other speakers. So since it's lunchtime, I want to kind of mix it up a little bit and make this as conversational as possible. So I want you to think of whatever questions you have to kind of trigger our conversation. But just for certain things that we can do to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit, I'll just tell you a little bit about some of my interests as it pertains to disability. So I serve on the Supreme Court of Michigan, which is our state's highest court. And as you can tell, I'm blind. So you might have some questions as to, so how do you get to serve on the highest court in your state? And I would be happy to talk about the electoral process. And I'd also be happy to talk about what it's like to go through an election as a blind person. So it's a unique kind of an election when you're doing a statewide race. And our Supreme Court races are kind of like our US Senate races. They're incredibly competitive. They get incredibly dirty and very nasty on both sides. And the question is, how did being blind enter into the ability to run for statewide office? What was the reaction of the state? What do people think about this? Because it had never been done before anywhere in the United States. So this was the first time you had a blind person running for a statewide office, on the state's highest court. And the big question people have is, so how did that work? How did you do it? And what were some of the techniques that you learned as you went through a statewide race? And how did people respond to having a disabled person running in this direction? We can also talk about just what it's like being on the court. As a blind person with a disability, how do you do your job? How do you do all the work that the court requires? How do you handle all the briefs and the materials that come in? How do you oversee evidence and evidentiary issues? How do you do all these things if you're not able to see? And I'm more than happy to talk about what the working relationship is like, and just from a practical position or technical stance, how this all works. As a person with a severe disability on the state's highest court, how do you do your job? How do you make sure you're being, you're getting the work done? And how do you make sure you don't slow down the rest of the workings of the court? And I've also done 27 marathons and a full Ironman competition. So for those of you who are familiar, the Ironman's a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a 26.2-mile run. And the last thing that we can talk about that you might have an interest in is I am a consultant to the State Department. And that's why I travel so often. I travel to different countries all across the world on behalf of the US government to really highlight the issues of disability. And what the State Department found was that in so many countries across the world, whether it be China, whether it be Brazil, whether it be Bolivia, whether it be Australia, whether it be China, whatever country you can think of, we've had a delegation that's gone to that country, and I've been asked to work with the State Department kind of on those issues. I went to China, I think, 2 or 3 times, because what is interesting about disability is that disability brings everybody together. Everyone has a connection to disability. And what State Department found was that whenever we do these trips all across the world, that there'd be governmental leaders who would have disabled children, but they would never admit it publicly. So like I traveled all through the Arab world, and when you're dealing with the monarchs, it's quite interesting because a lot of these different people have children that have severe special needs, but they don't acknowledge it publicly because they think it's weak and they think that it can be damaging to their brand or to their leadership capacity. So a lot of places that you go to, they don't talk about the fact that, well, like I can name in the UAE, there's 7 kings in the UAE, and one of the kings has 2 severely disabled children. But he never went public about it until we had our visit, and then he decided that this is an opportunity to go public, to talk about these issues, to highlight these types of things, and to use disability as a way to bring people closer together. So that's something I really enjoy doing with the State Department, is traveling to different countries and working on this issue and connecting with leaders of different countries and talking about how we can make their life better, how we can help their children, and by doing so, helping them create new nations that are going to serve and make life so much better for so many people in so many different ways. So we've got a lot to talk about. Who's got the first question that you want to hit on? It's always anticlimactic because I can never tell if there's hands. Does anybody have a question that you guys want to get us going on?
We have people circulating with mics.
Oh, great, okay.
Hi, how did you complete your exercise achievements you said you biked and ran a certain amount of distance?
Yeah, for the Ironman, it's a 2.4-mile swim, followed by a 112-mile bike, followed by a 26.2-mile run.
How did you bike not being able to see?
It's a great question. The bike is a tandem bike. So the way that the Ironman works is you start off by doing your 2.4-mile swim, and when you're doing the swim, you're lassoed to your guide. So you have a rope around your waist, and your guide has a rope around his waist. And what he'll do is he'll tug on the rope to give you an indication which way you should be going. Because you can't talk to each other because you're underwater. So he'll tug at the rope, and that's the way that you kind of understand, okay, this is where I have to swim, this is the direction I need to go in. The bike is a tandem bike. So you ride in a bicycle built for 2 people, and your guide handles the steering. So he's going to sit in the front, and he's going to steer the bike. And you're going to basically just follow his directions. He's going to say, lean hard right, lean hard left. And when he says lean hard right, you have to lean hard right when he gives you that instruction. Because if you don't lean hard right, when he tells you to lean hard right, he leans hard right and you don't do it, the bike's going to flip over. So you've got to really be careful. In fact, in the Ironman that I did, there was a non-disabled woman who was riding her bike, and she fell off of her bike and broke her neck.
Ooh.
Because what people have to realize about these competitions is you're doing it through the mountains. So this was in Idaho, and you're going up a mountain and down a mountain. So when you're going down a mountain, you're going to get to speeds of sometimes 30 to 40 miles per hour. And so you're going to be going at a very high rate of speed. So you've got to really be in sync with your captain, because when he gives you a command, you have no time to waste. You've got to do exactly what he says when he says it, so you don't get hurt.
That's
and then the third part is just doing the marathon, which is relatively straightforward. That's just you run with a guide, and he's going to give you directional cues like hard right, hard left, soft left, and you follow those directional cues as you run. So that's how you complete the Ironman competition in that regard.
That's awesome. Then could I just ask then, do you also work in tandem with your staff when you work as like your clerks or your stenographers as you're doing your court work?
Sure. So the accommodation that I get as a blind justice is I get 1 additional clerk. So everybody has 5 clerks, I get 6 clerks. And the reason I get 1 additional clerk is because I have to internalize all the materials that they're reading. So I can't use notes or highlight anything, so I have to do everything from memory in order